Hello and welcome to Frank's School. I'm going to go on with James Burke, his series The Day the Universe Changed, Episode 2, going on. Now, in the last time, I think it was, hope this is right, I think it was 108, I was talked about a street light. I meant traffic light, and talking about what he was doing there. Now, in what he's going to, I asked you to stop at Charmaine and Aachen. And you know, now I feel mostly I can let the series go. I think people who try can understand and follow it, although it is a lot. He's putting a lot in here. It's a little hard to, I think it might be worth it to take some notes just to keep track of what all's going on. Alcuin, I don't know if that's spelled right, of York. He's mentioned. He would be worth looking into, who helped Charmaine. Of course, the history is fascinating here, but Burke isn't teaching history exactly. He's teaching the history of science and the history of knowledge. Standardized writing, that came from Merovingian Minuscule, I think is the name of it. That word standardization, standardized writing, the hair raises a little bit on the back of my neck when I see that standardization, because although, you know, he's probably presenting it as a good thing, in my experience, standardization, especially, Roger, especially in the education system, I think it's been not altogether good. Come on, Roger. There being a pain. Anyway, standardized writing, you know, you can see that it was needed for civilization as we know it. He jumps then to Bologna in Italy. And I'm not going to teach everything he teaches. I want to point out the Justinian's Code. That I taught about in 7th grade, or to the 8th graders the first year, as one of the legacies we have from Rome, our legal system. So I want to, you know, he explains about it. Glossing, aha. I want to say something about glossing. Glossing is that, I tried to get my students to do that in their notes, actually, in the margin. It's also called marginalia. When you've got a page and around the outside you write other things, like you draw or you make little comments. That's called glossing. And you know, I realize what I'm doing really is I'm glossing James Burke's work. You know, hopefully you're now going to watch his episode, and I'm giving an explanation around it, about it, to sort of examine it and have you look at it through different eyes. Glossing. Then he jumps to Spain. Well, again, in the first year, in that chronological survey, I talked about the Spanish connection from the Arabic cultures across North Africa into Spain and then up into Europe that helped to save civilization. Well, that's what he's dealing with. Andalusia is down by Sevilla, Seville, and Cordoba. I think an awful lot of Americans, certainly, and probably Northern Europeans, don't realize how critical that connection was for our civilization. Now, 2 years ago, I was in Cordoba and Sevilla, just very briefly. You know, what do you do when you've got one day in Seville? Well, I went to Malaga. I left Seville. But, so I've been in the city, but there was so much to see. And, you know, I knew just, really, I went through there largely hoping I might be able to meet a friend of mine that I'd met online. El Cid, he mentions El Cid. Now, I underlined El Cid because El Cid, again, in the first year, I talk about it. It's one of those epics. Is written out, the epic of the English language, about this hero, El Cid, and quite mythical, you know, false even, fictional, what people think about the Cid, and it was made into a movie too. Now, in that part of Spain, he talked about irrigation fountains and water gardens. boy, if you know much about me at all, then you know that that is such an important subject to me. And you know, I'm just mentioning it, I guess. We got from the Arab's paper, rhyming poetry. And he mentions table manners. He goes so fast. I hope later in his series that he'll talk about courtly love. That's a subject that actually in my Frank school, quite a few people look at that video about courtly love. This idea that we have of the existence of a lady, that a woman is not just a woman, but is a lady. It seems that we have that from the Arabs, and that's kind of the closest that he comes to there, I think. I did want to point out the fact that he uses the word underwhelming. Earlier in this course somewhere I talked about something in a teen movie about overwhelming, and can you just be, is there such a thing as underwhelming, or can you just be whelmed? And the one character says, well, I think maybe in Europe you can be. Pretty funny. Anyway, there he is using the word underwhelming creatively in his style. The number 0 we did not know that number, and 0 is so important. That's where I'd ask you to stop, mostly because you can only take in so much of this. That's probably a good place to stop at the 29th minute. When I was still teaching, I had a video that I used to use sometimes, and a substitute that was in for me quite a bit. Loved it. I gave her the tape finally. It was called The History of One, and it dealt with the number 1 together with the number 0, and how the whole digital world came from that. Now these words with a Z, if a word's got a Z in it, it quite likely comes through the Arabic world. Azimuth. Also, if it starts with AL, like algebra or alcohol. And in etymology, I often point that out. You can sometimes guess at the Arabic etymology just because of those two things. Well, it's a lot to watch, and I think probably if you take what I've said together with this viewing, that would fill a class period now. We'll go faster, and I guess I would say to classroom teachers, I would urge the students to jot a few things down, maybe as they're watching. I don't know, and always just quietly, as he does his razzle-dazzle style of tricky use of words and images. All right, well, enjoy. See you next time.